Well, good evening, and hello to all you sports fanatics. We want to welcome you to our third episode of From the Grid to the Rim, and we talk about everything in between. I'm one of your co-hosts, Darylyn Brown, and with me is my other co-host and good friend, Biv Kenneth Fry. What up, Ken? Man, I know we down two of our peoples today. We got our other co-host, Monty Brown, who's feeling under the weather, so we're going to keep him in prayer. Hope he feels better soon. We're definitely missing him. And our other boy, Jack, who's, help me out, Ken. He's living the good life, playing golf and with his buddies and just living the fruits off his labor. Must be nice.
Yeah, he goes on a yearly golf trip. He still works. Me and him actually work together on, but he goes on an annual golf trip since he retired from the Navy. So he does this every year.
Oh, man. Must be nice. Must be nice. But as you guys know, this is this is a channel where we just like to have fun talking about sports, anything we want that's relevant or, to our point of view, of course. But we're excited about this third episode. And what we piloted off of is just talking about the NCAA tournament and March Madness. But it ain't even madness no more. It's turned into complete mayhem, insanity, ludicrousy, and anything like that. Everybody's bracket's been blown up. I mean, seriously, who would have thought? Who would have thought? I mean, nobody's seen this coming. You know what I'm saying? Who would have thought? UConn, Miami, the U's up in there, FAU, and San Diego State. I mean, who would have thought?
Nobody.
I mean, it's hard not to even see no blue bloods in there. So in my way of thinking, I mean, it's just really tough. You don't see the Novas, you don't see the Carolinas, you don't see the Dukes, you don't see, any Kansas, Kentucky, anybody that we're used to seeing up in this, but at the end of the day, somebody could also switch it around and talk about, this is also maybe a breath of fresh air, you know what I'm saying, for the NCAA. Yes. Who would have thought this could be a breath of fresh air? You know what I'm saying? You're talking about maybe two potential dark horses. I mean, I saw Miami as a dark horse. I knew if they played like they played in the way they played all year in the ACC, they were going to be a problem. Everybody saw UConn as a problem, even though they weren't ranked like it. But everybody saw that UConn could give a lot of teams some problems. And then here comes the underdogs you never saw coming. Florida Atlantic, San Diego State, with their elite defense. I mean, man, who would have thought? But for me, even though I don't like seeing my teams or some of the originals, I can't hate. This is what sports is all about. This is what March Madness is all about. You have at least one maybe underdog going there like we've seen in the past, like the Butlers and things like that. But at the end of the day, look who we're looking at now. We're looking at least two underdogs in San Diego State and FAU that pretty much nobody had going to the Final Four. I think maybe people slipped in, maybe Miami and UConn, maybe a few brackets here and there because, they were going to be some tough outs. So maybe few people had them in their brackets, but nobody saw this coming, man.
Nobody. I had UConn. I had UConn, but I for sure as heck didn't have Miami, but I did have UConn, but I did not. Yeah. But I did, FAU and San Diego State, there's no way.
Right. I mean, I think I had UConn going far into the Sweet 16. And I think I had Miami the same. But didn't see this coming. But at the end of the day, congratulations to those four teams. I think everybody's, and we'll talk more about that as we close out who we got going, who we got winning. But first off, let's go ahead and just dive right into it because we always seem to get into it and then we start getting limited on time. So let's just go ahead and dive into it. We saw one of the first games, UConn versus Gonzaga. Now, based on the time and where you live, I really didn't get the chance to catch all of that game. I caught some of the first half on and off. I think it was towards halftime where UConn was up 39-32. I'm thinking Gonzaga did enough just to try to claw back in and to make it a game. But then after that, I couldn't catch any of the second half, unfortunately. But when the parts I did catch, it didn't even look like much of a game after that. UConn took control. Bobby Hurley's team just Dan Hurley's team just took control, and they wrapped that up real quick.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they did.
So I mean, but I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that, man, because like I said, man, I wasn't expecting that from Gonzaga because that was like my only team left going into the final, or at least trying to make a run at the Final Four. But after that blowout, was that was the end of my bracket.
Yeah,
Done.
I got some thoughts on that. Yeah, that was well, first, Gonzaga is the pride of Washington State because they've been the best team in Washington for like since God knows when. They've been balling for a long time. They made like the NCAA tournament 20 plus years in a row. They always win their conference. The only problem is they're in a weak conference, but it's not their fault. I think they got to try to strengthen that somehow. I know they try to strengthen their non-conference games. I know they try to play some bigger teams in non-conference games, but they play in the West Coast Conference, and obviously there's a lot of opinions out there, but some people think that hurts them. But they're always good every year, and they made a lot of deep runs lately. But speaking of UConn, like I said, I picked them to go into the Final Four, so that's one pick I got right, and it's their first Final Four since 2014. But UConn just dominated that game in every way. I mean, it was a blowout. It was a 30-point game. It was close at halftime, but UConn outscored them 43-22 in the second half. Gonzaga could not hit their free throws to keep them in the game. They went 12 out of 22 from the free throw line, so just barely over 50%. And UConn had balanced scoring. And they play really good defense. Like, anyone in UConn can score. They can go off.
Yeah.
Hawkins,
that's for
3-point assassin. That guy is probably going to the NBA next year. He's only a sophomore, but he might come back. We'll see what happens, during the Final Four. But I wouldn't be surprised if he says he's going to the NBA because that kid can shoot, and he's been the leading scorer all tournament. Then they got their big man Sanogo, who can score on the inside, and he plays really good defense, and he's a good assist guy. I don't know how many times I saw in the second half when UConn started blowing out Gonzaga. He had 4 or 5 nice dishes to his other partner in the paint, Jackson, like wide open, easy like layups. I mean,
man,
he can score, but he sees the floor and he's unselfish. And UConn is just well balanced, man. Like they can, like 4 or 5 guys scoring double digits every game, and they don't care who. They don't care who the leading scorer is. They just want to win.
Oh my God, you couldn't be more right. At least in what I've seen in their play. Man, you said a key word right there, balance. And man, if there's any team that's coming in balanced, both offensively and defensively on both ends of the court, UConn is number 1 on my list with the remaining teams left.
Yes, I got UConn I do too. Until someone can prove that they can beat UConn, because UConn's just blowing people out. Like there hasn't been a close game with them. Yeah. They blow out Arkansas in the Sweet 16, then they blow out Gonzaga in the Elite 8, and both those teams were on rolls. I mean, Arkansas came off a huge win against Kansas, and they just blew those guys out. I mean, both those games. Well, the Gonzaga game was not over at halftime. Gonzaga was still in the game at halftime, but the Arkansas game, they were out at halftime. They were already losing by like 15 or 16 points. I mean, they had a slight chance to win that game. They came out starting well in the second half, and they did not. Like that lead went from like 15 to 25 points, like in like the first 5 or 6 minutes of the second half. So UConn's my favorites, and they're the only ones that have experience in the Final Four. Yeah. All those 2 teams have never been in the Final Four, so I got UConn right now. We could, of course, talk more into that later.
Because that I want to give who I think. We'll catch on to that.
Yeah,
all right, man. But I appreciate it. Yeah, man. Good looking out, Ken. Because I didn't really get a chance to really see towards the end of that game or any of that second half. But man, yeah. When I saw the final score, I was like, oh my goodness. I'm glad I probably didn't I'm glad I probably didn't watch it.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
but it's probably disappointing for a lot of people out here in Washington. I'm sure they're pretty butthurt. So.
Exactly. I'm sure. All right, but the next matchup that followed after that, we're talking about FAU and Kansas. Or I think this was the first game before UConn and Gonzaga. But we have Florida Atlantic, Kansas State. I did catch a good majority of this game, and let me just tell you, Black Golden was, to me, he was the story of the second half. As he ended the game with 14 points, 13 rebounds, 6 of those being offensive. Then you have Marquise Noel showing how elite he can be, and I think he's going to probably transition well whenever he makes that leap to the NBA. He can be an up and coming potential awesome point guard whenever he decides to make that step. But he showed in this game how elite he can be on both ends of the court. With his 30 points, 12 assists, 3 rebounds. The man's court vision, to me, in my eyes, is unreal. In that game, we saw both teams were evenly matched. It was great team ball on both ends. When Kansas State showed up, they started showing out the start of the second half. We saw FAU took the lead in the first half after about that 15-minute mark, or 15:48 mark, with a dominant performance from Black Golden with that slam. I don't know if you ever caught that, but
I saw that. That was nice. That was early. That was nice. Yeah, that was deep.
Man,
that was a poster.
Bro, I'm trying to tell you. And then you saw Naquan Tomlin's defense and offensive efforts were valiant for Kansas State. But then it really told the story down to the last 2 minutes. I'm sure you'll probably agree with me. You saw a lot of back and forth. We also saw a clutch 3-point from Marquise Noel with about 1:47 left to go. We saw a clutch layup from Johnell Davis with 1:18 seconds left to go. Then you saw Cam Carter's clutch 3-pointer with 22.3 seconds left to go. We also saw Tomlin's clutch 2-pointer with a beautiful pass from Noel. Beautiful pass from Noel with 8.7 seconds left to go. Forrest with his clutch 2 free throws, 6 seconds left to go, ultimately pretty much sealed the deal. But in spite of Noel's 30-point effort, FAU had at least 4 players in double digits, which really told the story for me. And when you at least have 4 players in double digits, it's really hard not to win that game. So hats off to FAU and Coach Dusty May, man. That was a great game by both teams.
Yeah, I agree completely, Dwayne. Man, I've been so impressed with Marquise Noel this whole entire tournament. It's too bad he had to go out, but he had 30 points and 12 assists that game. I mean, he's been balling out every game, and every Kansas State game has been an exciting game. And I'm like, oh my God,
I'm telling you, man,
they've all gone down to the wire.
Yeah,
this time they just fell short.
Yeah.
But I think, the first thing I noticed from FAU was, like, because that was my first time really seeing them play, they were fast and athletic, and that dunk was something else, like you said. But they also had a good big man. Their big man was a good post-up player, and he impressed me with his post-up game. So him and KSU's big man Tomlin were going at. I thought they had a pretty good, intriguing matchup. And Marquise Noel, like, when it was 79-76 and they had a chance to tie for overtime, he made that pass to one of his guys, and they just didn't catch it cleanly, and they never got the shot off. And that was was the game.
Man, oh,
that was the game. But it was right there to go in overtime. Well, they had to make the shot, but they had a chance to make a shot at least. And
they did.
But I won't say it was disappointing, but Kansas State's second best player, who's been good all year and good throughout the tournament, Tay Johnston, their power forward, he only had 9 points, and he's their second best player. He had some really good games. I'm not saying anything about that young man, because he's a great player. I know he's gonna go. He's definitely gonna go to the NBA. But because he's like 6'7", 6'8", power forward, he could play, he could shoot the 3, but he just didn't have his typical game. He averaged 17 points a game, and he only had 9, so that might have hurt them a little bit. And then, like you said, FAU was just clutch on free throws at the end. Like, they did not give them much of a chance. They made every single one of them, so they kept Kansas State, a little bit away, So that was a great game.
It was, brother. It was. No argument here, man. So they definitely given the people what they wanted in that game. So hey, but on top of that, there was other games the following day, to talk about, what I'm saying? So the other one we had on deck was Creighton and San Diego State. Now, school me on this, bro. Who big man, Ryan Kalkbrenner? Am I saying his name right?
His name's Kalkbrenner, yeah.
Man,
he had a game.
Listen, bruh, I'm trying to tell you, man, I was impressed by old boy, man. I really was. I really was, man. I mean, I think his game could transition well. But to me, he's kind of like one of those centers that transition to that new type of center in the NBA that kind of
Yes.
spread you out, but he can still be dominant whenever you need him to, and get you a lot of points in the paint. But man, I mean, golly, man, he put on a show. He definitely put on a show, in my opinion. But we talk about Creighton versus San Diego State. Now, the way I saw the game, the first half, the way Creighton moved and shot that ball was really impressive to me. And that was their whole. And if I'm not mistaken, that's Creighton's game. You know, move that ball and shoot. You know what I'm saying? They're a good shooting team, and the way I saw them move and the way they were motioning through that first half, man, was really impressive to me. It really was a story. Basically, with both teams, it was really a great story about a great offense in Creighton and a very underrated lockdown defense with San Diego State. You could see the strength in Creighton, how they use their strength in moving the ball, creating numerous opportunities. Yet at the same time, you saw San Diego State definitely held their own and staying patient and letting opportunities come to them by creating points inside the paint. We saw Ryan Kalkbrenner, who had a very strong first half, along with the team shooting. I think they shot 54% from the floor, 14 of 26. And then we saw the second half. You saw San Diego State storm out the gates. You knew this was going to be a good game. So San Diego stormed out the gates the second half. It didn't help Creighton going 1 for 7, from the second, starting in the second half from the 3-point line. And then we saw shortly after Creighton settled in his game and started going on a little 8-0 run. We saw Mensah and Kalkbrenner pretty much be the story of both teams going at it head to head, blow for blow. And then you saw at that 7-minute mark, you could see it was all grit from both teams. There you could tell it was going to be a close game. You see both teams missing shots, easy layups. You saw Trimble and Butler clamping down on defense,
pressure,
doing the best to keep their team in it. Then you see Creighton go 0 for 10 from 3-point. 0 for 10, bro. That's not their game, in which they excel at. But it was totally indicative of San Diego State's defense, because they were the talk. When it comes down to San Diego State, all you heard was talk of their defense, and you could tell because that Creighton started lacking that movement that worked so well with them in the first half. That San Diego State took advantage of that, and they locked them down. And then you saw the last 2 minutes. It was about who wanted it more from both teams making clutch shots. Yet it wouldn't be March Madness if we didn't have a little drama before the end. We saw with 1.2 seconds left to go, we saw Trimble miss that first. He made his second. That won the game. We saw a failed lob pass to try to do it with 0.3 seconds left, yet the refs determined it was over. And then credit San Diego State's defense. I think the defense pretty much won the game for them. I credit them. It was gonna be history for one of these two programs, because neither's been to the Final Four. But my goodness, bro, I'm sorry. My goodness, I just can't believe that a foul is going to determine the game. And I don't want to harp on this too much, because I'm very opinionated when it comes to this situation right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I would have loved to see an overtime.
Yes.
I would have loved to see the overtime. I mean, the best offense versus the best defense. I mean, bro. I mean, for real, yo, give the people what they want and send that joke into overtime. You know what I'm saying? But yet, we can't always get what we want, and we gotta deal with the fallout and the ref, call what he called, and
anyways,
I'll pass it on to you, my brother.
That was a tough one, man.
Yes, it was.
That was a tough one. And I can't say anything about that, because I do the thing for football, and the only thing I could say is, and this isn't me being defensive over officials, but the only thing I could say is, one thing I noticed in football, and probably the same thing with basketball, is on the court and on the field, on the gridiron, is different than anywhere else. It's just faster. That's one thing I've noticed when I did start doing football officiating last year, like how fast this game really was on the gridiron. So, but so we won't dig into that, but I'll add a few things. It was Creighton's first Elite Eight since 1941.
Right.
And like you said, both teams have never made the Final Four, so now San Diego State got their first one. So congratulations to them. But
congratulations, man.
But Creighton did only have 23 points in the second half. Like you alluded to, like San Diego State's defense is underrated, but I saw that early in the tournament how good their defense was. I think we all did. We commented on some previous shows like San Diego State defense is legit. I had another stat. Creighton was only 2 out of 17 from a 3-pointer all game, and they averaged 9 a game. So that, like you said, that hurt them. And they're up at halftime, and I think they scored 33 points in the first half, and only 23 in the second. And a guy that stepped up for San Diego State was a kid named Butler. He had 18 points.
Yeah.
Their best player all season long and all tournament only had 2 points. But this other kid named Butler stepped up when their best player was just having an off night offensively. He was still playing good defense, but he wasn't able to get the ball in the basket. But he stuck in there, and he had assists. He knew his shot wasn't going in, so he gave it to Butler. And Butler was making those shots, man. So, and San Diego State has found a way to hang in there, like you said, because there was a couple times in the first half where I thought Creighton might get this up to double digits, and then San Diego State would just lock down and hit a big shot of their own, like a timely shot to get it. They just stayed in range in the first half to make it a good game and play their game in the second half. Then they're a grinder team. If they can keep it close in the first half, I think they're very dangerous in the second because they play a grinding game, and they want to be physical. They want you to get all upset. They want you to get pissed off because where's the foul? Where's the foul? They're trying to get you. They're trying to get you upset and get you out of your game, and like that. That's what they do, man. So, but yeah, Coach McDermott is great for Creighton, and San Diego State coach, Dutcher. He came under the old Michigan guys' coaching tree. The Michigan coach that took the Fab Five to the Final Four. I can't remember his name. I know his name. He's on top of my Steve Fisher. He's under that coaching tree. So congratulations to Brian Dutcher because he's under a legendary coach. So but congratulations to San Diego State, man. Big surprise in the tournament. Probably the biggest. Well, them and FAU are the 2 biggest surprises by far.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, then, man, we kind of topped it off for the last game. Now, this was the game I was really looking forward to.
Yeah.
I really was. Out of all the games, I really want to see how Texas would do, which was like one of the last high-ranking teams in the tournament against Miami, who was, like I said from the start, man, they were pretty much a dark horse. I knew that if they kept that same momentum that they had they played in the ACC, that if it would transition well into the tournament, and look at them now. So when we talk about that game, in my opinion, I saw 2 good teams. Well, I knew it was going to be 2 good teams, but how will it transition against each other? Well, it transitioned to a great and pretty much a hell of a game. In my opinion, I saw that this was a game I was looking forward to most. Again, I believe Miami started off strong. They started the first half, and then I want to say around that 11-minute mark, Texas started to find their footing. We saw them definitely stroking that basketball like it was nobody's business. They really started to show how dominant they were in their conference. The hustle and the pace of Miami complemented the Texas play, and was able to find their game, points in the paint. Now, even though Wong wasn't a heavy contributor in that first half, Miami was distributing the ball effectively even without him, because he's pretty much their ringleader.
Yeah.
He created opportunities for other players though to contribute, with players like Miller, who was 6 for 6 in the first half from the floor, and the first half being a beast in the paint. Yet Miami, in my opinion, I thought they needed more from Wong. I just knew they would not win this game if Wong didn't show up. But the crazy stat, that ended the first half that I saw is that even though Wong wasn't at his best, Miami was still shooting 64% from the field. You know what I'm saying? So they were doing enough to try to, keep level. But only 2 points in the first half, to me, wasn't going to cut it from Wong. They needed him, and that's what I was telling people. If Miami has a chance, Wong has to show up. But credit Texas for their awesome defending beyond the arc in the first half. We saw Carr is pretty much a certified baller for real. Carr is a certified baller. Second half was extremely intense for both teams. Rim to rim, we started seeing the second half. It was just like Texas couldn't miss, especially when they went up 41 to 53 around that 13-minute mark. To me, they ramped up the intensity on Miami, but it almost seems like, you know, they couldn't miss. It seemed like it was the Carr and Allen show that whole for the start, at least the start of the second half. But credit Miami though. Credit Miami. They are a great team, and they did cut it down to 4 points with that around that 7-minute mark. They started to chip away. Isaiah Wong finally seemed to find his purpose, along with Omier, who was in foul trouble, stepped up in a big way, along with Poplar, who and they were shooting around 62% from the field at that time. 4 players in double figures around that time, and began to swing in their favor around that 5-minute mark. We saw Jordan Miller, Jordan Miller was the player of the game.
Yes.
I mean, for real. With a minute left to go, we saw Miami take control. Omier and Wong made clutch shots. Miami had 5 players in double figures by that time. But this game belonged to Jordan Miller. 25 points, 7 for 7 from the field, 11 for 11 from free throw. Absolute perfection. It was hard to lose a game when you have 5 players in double figures, at least on the college level. So hats off to the Canes. Hats off to Jim Laranaga's team. Man, they really put on a great performance to seal the deal and move them on to the Final Four.
Absolutely. The score was 45-37 Texas at halftime. Mm-hmm. And like you said, Texas got outscored 51-36 in the second half. But but they had such balanced scoring in Miami, like you said, because Miller had the 25 points, and then 3 or 4 other players all had a range between 14 and 16, including Wong. Well, like Wong, Pack, and I think Poplar all had between 14 and 16 points. They were all contributing. And another interesting thing I noticed looking at the stats was the disparity in free throws. Miami went 28 out of 32 from the free throw line. Texas was 11 out of 15, which is still a good percentage, but they took 17 more. They took 17 more free throw shots and made 17 more free throw shots. So it was besides them balling out, like I thought the free throw disparity was something interesting to note. And like I said, it was tied 79-79 with 1 minute, and then Texas they didn't execute an offense, and Miami went off in the last minute, and they just wrapped that game up, like you said. Man, that was crazy. And I think for the game, Miami shot 59% as a total for the whole entire game, which is lights out. And Texas was 50%, which still was pretty dang good, but 59% for a game, that's hard to lose a game like that.
It is. But you hit the nail on the head. It really comes down to execution. And we saw that Miami's defense pretty much clamped down on Texas. Towards the end, Texas couldn't make jack diddly. They couldn't make no shot. They couldn't make it work. And then Miami found their groove and found their footing. And Larinaga, I mean, I've seen a couple of his press conferences, and when he says once his team finds his footing, he knows his team. Like they will be a tough out, So, man, credit to the Canes, man. I mean, like I said, they were a dark horse of mine. I didn't have them going to the Final Four, but I had them as a dark horse going deep and causing problems for a lot of teams in their path. So, credit to Canes, bro. Credit to Canes.
Another thing that was interesting too is before we get into the next segment was 2 5 seeds are in the Final Four. San Diego State was a 5 seed, and so was Miami. So it was just a crazy March Madness, man. Straight chaos. Yeah. Usually 2 5 seeds get eliminated in the first round, and we got 2 5 seeds in the Final Four. That's insane in my mind. Like,
agreed.
Yeah, that's crazy. I love this term. I think, like you said in the very opening up the show, like there's really no blue blood. You can kind of consider UConn blue blood because they've been there and done this before. So they're probably maybe the blue blood out of the group. But I think a lot of people like this because there's new blood in the Final Four. And people there was more upsets. And there's always upsets, but there was more upsets this year than in any year, man. I mean,
I agree.
It was crazy, man.
Yeah, and I don't know one pundit or commentator that has not said the same. I mean, that's why I'm just saying this. Everybody's bracket was tore up. I don't think nobody had a perfect bracket after the second day. After the second day, I don't think it was a perfect bracket left.
Absolutely not. If they
Usually you
say
have
that,
some
they're
perfect
lying.
brackets going into the Sweet 16, you know what I'm saying? Or maybe, but there was not one perfect bracket left after that second day, I don't believe.
No,
So,
no,
yeah,
no, no,
yeah,
absolutely not.
yeah.
That was
Well,
crazy.
man, let's do it. Let's talk about it before we close out. Final four, who you got, man? We got San Diego State going into going against FAU. We got Miami going against UConn. How crazy would it be to see FAU and Miami in the championship? Two Florida teams going at it. I
That
was
would be
looking at
pretty
that. I was
crazy.
saying, what? Nah. Or how crazy would it be? You see an East Coast team versus a West Coast team against San Diego State and UConn. Man, I mean, but at the end of the day, when it comes to Miami, I have UConn squeaking this out. But to me, this game, Miami and UConn has buzzer beater written all over it, in my opinion. I think Miami is going to do their best to hang in there because they got the people and the personnel to do it. But UConn is well balanced with Dan Hurley's team, man, and end to end, offensive, defensively, man, they got what it takes to go ahead and just take it all, in my opinion. So I got UConn edging out Miami. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be an edge because Miami got the momentum in their favor, to be honest. San Diego State, FAU, man. When it comes down to they say defense wins games, I got San Diego squeaking it out, man. Just by a hair. Who knows? This could be a buzzer beater type of game, but I got San Diego State squeaking it out. I mean, they've been playing top-notch defense and tough, and it's hard to do that. And if they could stick to what works for them, I got them squeaking it out. So I see UConn and San Diego State, in my opinion, and UConn winning it all. But I'm not going to be surprised, and I'm not going to be mad, and I'm not going to be sad at all if I can see an FAU get past San Diego State and a Miami upset a UConn and see two Florida teams up in the championship. I think that'll be good for the state, and just good for the tourney.
Absolutely. We got a little over 2 minutes left, but yeah, I'm with you, Dwayne. I got yeah, man, these games are so hard to pick. I definitely got UConn. I think that's my easier choice. But Miami is really good. And like I said, I would not be surprised if somehow Miami pulled that out. But I got UConn, like I mentioned earlier in the show, because I just think until someone can prove to me that they can beat UConn, I got UConn. Yeah, and the FAU San Diego State game, that's going to be, whew.
Yeah,
that's going to be really good offense versus a really good defense, and we're going to see who can control that game from offensive or defensive standpoint. If FAU's offense goes off, I see them doing it, but San Diego State can do what they've been doing all tournament and making these grinder games. I'm with you. I got them squeaking out. I think San Diego State somehow is going to pull this off, and I have UConn and San Diego State in the final also, and I do have UConn winning it. I think they're going to bring home their first national championship since 2014. I got UConn.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, we want to just say thank you all for joining us for this third episode of From the Grid to the Rim and everything in between. I believe we're, truly in for a treat for this weekend's games, and we're going to see who's going to be victorious at the end. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Go ahead and leave a few comments. Let us know who you got winning. Let us know who you rolling with. But other than that, I want to say thank you to my co-host, Big Kenneth Fry. We miss our other co-hosts. Please get well, Monty. Yes. Enjoy yourself, Brother Jack. See y'all soon. But until the next episode, we'll see y'all back for episode 4 From the Grid to the Rim. Salute.
Salute. Get well, Monty, and see you soon, Jacko.